Okay, welcome to part 11 of the Reconstruction in the West. In this section, we're going to talk about a couple of different reactions to the reservation movement for the Native Americans out west. And the first was a book written by Helen Hunt Jackson in 1881 called A Century of Dishonor. A Century of Dishonor has a similar impact for Native American causes as Uncle Tom's Cabin did for the cause of slavery. The problem is that the opinion that Helen Hunt Jackson has is that the damage has already been done. She chronicles 100 years of treatment of the Native Americans by the U.S. government, and as she chronicles that, she states essentially that they need to be civilized at this point. We've already destroyed their culture. We've already destroyed any chance that they had of living independently. And so, essentially, since we broke it, we now need to do what we can to make it better. And we can never replace what we took from them. And so what we need to do is we need to assimilate them. We need to bring them into white middle-class culture. And we need to essentially do it for their own good. And so while her book has very good intentions, it comes up with a conclusion that their culture is too far damaged, too far gone, to ever be of benefit again. And so we must do what we can to help them physically, economically, and socially. What you have to remember when we take a look at history is that you cannot judge the people of the past by today's standards. We can see things as right and wrong and, oh, we shouldn't have done that. But we're looking back on that as in hindsight. We're looking back at that from a much different point of view. And just as we have been formed by our parents' opinions, and just as we have been formed by the society around us and formed by our teachers, and today's society is very much about cultural appreciation and the willingness to cooperate and work together. People of the past weren't raised with those values. It was kill or be killed, the fight for survival, both physically and culturally. And so it wasn't a matter of these people thought that they were doing this great damage. They thought that by actually improving the lives of Native Americans socially and economically and bringing them into our culture was actually an improvement, and it was what needed to be done, and it was our moral obligation to help these people. Today we would say it would be our moral obligation to appreciate diverse cultures. And so when we look at Helen Hunt Jackson's book, I think she had the best of intentions, but I think she was operating within a system that we are not familiar with. And so we can't really judge her or the society at the time and say, well, these people were just absolutely wrong and evil for doing this. That was how society worked, and that was the society in which they were raised. Another method of helping the Indians was the Dawes Act of 1887. The Dawes Act, also known as the Allotment Act, put forward that forced civilization view from Helen Hunt Jackson's book. It dissolved the tribes as independent nations. It dissolved any type of self-government that the tribes had. And it divided up reservations and gave ownership of land to individual Indians. Native American culture did not have this sense of personal ownership of land that other civilizations do. And what it did was it tried to set up farm families of Native Americans, each with about 160 acres of free land. Once the Indians acted like good white settlers, then they could be granted ownership of the land outright and citizenship if they behaved themselves for 25 years. Once you have Cochise and Geronimo and a lot of the other tribes acting up in the ghost dance, that period will be extended further and further. And so full rights won't be given to all Native Americans until about the 1940s. So it will actually take quite a while. But another part of the Dawes Act was to set up Native American schools. And these schools were not meant to teach Native American culture. They were meant to teach the Indians to act like whites. And so when the children go to the schools, and the most famous of these Indian schools is the Carlisle Indian School in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. Those schools were set up for assimilation. They were set up to get rid of the last remnants of Indian culture and to make all of those Native American tribes more white. And so their hair was cut, which was a sign of mourning or dishonor among Native Americans. Native American children were given white names. They were told to forget their old Indian names. Their names were taken from them. Their culture was taken from them. They were not allowed to practice Native American religion. They were not allowed to speak Native American languages. They were forced to learn English. They were forced to become Christian. And they were often beaten if they failed to follow any of these rules. So this process of assimilation is the government's official policy until the 1930s, when the Indian Reorganization Act, or the Indian New Deal, tried to restore tribal life. But it really devastates Native American culture to the point where there are very, very few true Native Americans practicing true Native American culture today. In fact, there's probably nobody in the United States that follows the ancient ways, but what they follow is a hybrid between white ways and Native American ways. One kind of interesting thing that come out of the Carlisle Indian School was they were known for athletics. And their most famous graduate, Jim Thorpe, was known for his athletic prowess. He played both in Major League Baseball and in the NFL. He also won 2 gold medals at the Olympics in 1912. Very fast runner. I believe he played for the Washington Senators of the old Major League Baseball. And the NFL teams were completely different. They were a lot of smaller teams. I think he might have played for Canton, the Canton Bulldogs of the National Football League. And so if you ever want to take a look at one of the more interesting stories to come out of this period, you can take a look at Jim Thorpe and what he was able to do coming out of the Carlisle Indian School.